suggest. I do want to talk quickly about calculators because obviously for this subject, it's a huge deal. It's kind of quite important that we know how to use our calculator. And in recent years, there have been so many kind of calculators coming out, little changes. And it's, kind of a bit of another dimension to this subject of knowing what one to choose and what to get, and do I know how to use my calculator? So I'm going to talk about this briefly, and then we're going to get on to doing some maths, which I'm sure you'll be happy to hear. As I said, do still feel free to ask questions in the Q&A. But as we start the maths, please follow along, give the questions a go yourself. So in terms of the calculators, I've kind of put the popular Casio choices here. And I'm not on commission from Casio, by the way. I'm not like a rep. I'm just showing that these are kind of the common ones you're going to see in the maths classroom and in the exam. And they're all allowed in the exam. But there are just a little bit of advice I'd like to give you, because I know that some people think, oh, should I get a new calculator? Will I have time to learn how to use it? And all this panic sort of sets in. So please don't panic. If you've got a calculator and you're comfortable with it, just make sure you can do the key things you need to be able to do. Another thing just to point out, which a lot of students don't realize, is if you've just recently bought a new calculator and you think, I don't know how to do some of the stuff on here, but it is very good, but I do know how to do it on here. And I'm kind of in an in-between stage of, should I take this one or take this one? You are allowed to take more than one calculator into the exam. So don't panic. Like, that's in a way like a lovely problem to have. But don't worry about, oh, I need to quickly learn and stress about that. You can actually take both. So just so you're aware. Now, the CG50 is a very advanced calculator. A-level students will have it. It'll draw graphs. It's got the periodic table. It's got Python. It's kind of way over the top. To be honest, I feel like the only thing it's missing is, ChatGPT or something on there. But it's got a lot of plus points for advanced maths, but you have to put it in exam mode. And to be honest, if you've got that calculator and you know how to use it, great. But because it is so much more expensive than the others and there's no real greater gain, if anything, it's harder to use, I wouldn't advise buying that sort of, or getting that now if you haven't already got it. I just generally wouldn't advise that one for GCSE, just because whilst it's so powerful, it can actually be harder to use. And it's, a lot more expensive than the other calculators. So that's just my own personal advice on that one. It's a fantastic calculator. It's great for A-level, but right now, I would personally say it's not worth it, unless you've had it and you've been used to using it. My kind of personal favorite, this one. So this is I've got like an assortment of the calculators here. I don't know if you can, maybe still see me on the little video. So this one, I like this one because I'm very used to it. The kind of classic white back class whiz. And I just want to talk about the kind of key features to these. So it's the old school style with the like traditional equals button, S to D button. So for me, it was very familiar to use, and some of you might have this calculator. But the reason why it's really good for GCSE is it has the polynomial solver. So it solves quadratics for you. You just type the question in. You don't even need to use the quadratic formula. And it gives you the turning points. So you don't, that can help with like completing the square. And it will even solve cubics and quartics and harder equations. It also solves simultaneous equations, the linear ones. So that's brilliant for checking, as well as doing all the kind of classic calculator stuff. And quadratic inequalities, which do come up now as well. So it's a really, really fantastic calculator. And I think that's brilliant for GCSE. This button as well, just in case you don't know what it does, I always point this out because I'm kind of frustrated. I went through a maths degree and all through school not knowing really the two cool things that this button does. So I'm just going to explain that now. So if you were to type in, if you've got a calculator with this button, it doesn't necessarily have to be this calculator. Almost looks like a bit of punctuation or something. If you type a number in like 360 and you press equals, and then you press shift, which is up here, and then you press that button, which says fact, and get the fact bit, it does the prime factorization of 360. So it gives you it as a product of its primes, which is really good. It saves you doing a prime factor tree. It's really handy for LCM and HCF questions. So that's one thing that that button does. Do feel free to try that now if you can. So if you type it in, I'll just talk it through again as I do it, because I haven't done this myself for a while. 360 equals shift, fact, and the answer literally comes out in ascending order of the base as the prime factorization. That's one thing this button does. Now, the other thing that the button does, and it's doable on the other calculators, by the way, it's just not all on that same button. The other thing that this button does, when you have this bit here, if you don't click shift, you type something like 1.27, and then you click that button, it converts hours into hours, minutes, and seconds. Because that's actually quite nasty to do, because it's not out of 100, it's out of base 60. So this is actually really good for physics as well. It converts 1.27 hours into hours, minutes, and seconds. So that's a really good use of that button. That's actually quite practical in science. Now, in terms of these two calculators, they're both called the class Wiz, but this 991EX with the white back is the better one. It's the one with the additional functions. There's a lot more options, kind of things that it can do. And the reason I would say beware is sometimes I've seen students have this problem where they've tried to Google this online and they've used this picture as it's arrived. And whilst this calculator's fine, it doesn't have the quadratic solver and the other bits that I mentioned. And they are relatively comparable in price. So I would push for the one on the right if you want all those little handy extra features. So that's my advice out of those two. Now, since it's also good for A-level maths, and this just doesn't have those extra features, it still has all the main stuff you need. So if you've got that and you're happy using it, that's fine. But just be aware that you have to use quadratic formula and stuff in order to be able to solve on that. You can't just type the question in. Now, these are basically the modernized versions of what I just showed you with a bit more of like a facelift. So effectively, this is the one that doesn't have as much, and the gold button one is the equivalent of the white back one. So this has all the cool extra features like the polynomial solver, and the quadratic inequalities and so on. So this is a similar comparison. The gold button is better than the blue one in terms of the extra features. Has all those same extras. So these are the kind of two more powerful ones that I would really say have the little extras to them. Oh, good question. So I think there's a question in the chat. I'm just going to try and answer this live. But basically, I think we're asking how I would do the other things that I just mentioned on this calculator that doesn't have that button. Is that right? Hopefully that's the kind of question we're asking. So I'll just show you quickly because that's a really fair point. It's quite different. So these newer calculators, like I said, this is a little bit weird to get used to. So in order to get that, I'll show you now. If you type 360 in and press execute, if you wanted to do the prime factorization, and then you press this button, which is like the new equals. I don't know why they've done that. And then if you click format, which is down the bottom by that button, and some of you might want to click along and try this. And this can be done actually on the calculator that was here as well with the blue button. They can all do the prime factorization. You click format and you scroll down to prime factor, and then it will give you the prime factorization. So I hope that's answered your question. And in terms of the hour, minutes, and seconds thing, that's in another place. I'll explain that now as well. So the prime factorization is when, and the cool thing about it is you can, on that format option, you can write it in all different ways. So that's one of the features there. Oh, okay. And another question about the quadratic one. I'll talk about how to do that in a minute, how to solve a quadratic on the other one. It might fit in better when we do quadratics, but I can address all these calculated things now if we want. Sorry. So in terms of the hours, minutes, and seconds thing, let me just type 1.27 in. Let me see where it's gone. Right, so it's the same sort of thing. If we type 1.27, press equals or execute, I think that's what that stands for, don't actually know. And then you go format again, and you actually have to scroll down to a thing called, it's like you've got to use the down arrow, and then there's a thing called sexagesimal, which is like an old Babylonian, let me try and spell that right, sexagesimal, Babylonian system where they use base 60 instead of base 10. And it will convert it into base 60, which will give you hours, minutes, and seconds. So then it will say it's 1 hour, 16 minutes, and 12 seconds is equivalent to 1.27 hours. So that's how you do that. Very quickly, because I know, I hope that's answered your question, and I'm really grateful these questions coming in, so I'm going to try and do those quickly now. For those that have this one and this one, you can solve quadratics on there just by typing the question. If you've got this white back one now, let me just quickly answer this live, the way you would solve the quadratic. So if you go to menu setup, let me write it in here, give myself a little space, that's handy. Menu setup, and then you want to go to down and scroll it down past the first 8 options. So there's the option 9, A and B and C. 9 is a table, A is an equation, B is an inequality, and C is a ratio. If you go to the option 9, x, y equals 0, it's option A, then that allows you to do equations, and then it gives you an option of simultaneous equation or polynomial. If you pick 2 for polynomial, you type 2 in, then it will ask you for the degree, and we want the highest power to be 2 because it's a quadratic. So you click 2 again. That's called the degree of the polynomial. And then it says 0x squared plus 0x plus 0. You literally type the quadratic in there, press equals, and it will solve it. And if you press equals, once you've typed it all in, it will give you x1, it will give you the first answer of the quadratic. You hit equals again, it will give you the second answer. And then you hit equals a third time, it will give you the x coordinate of the turning point. You press equals a fourth time, it will give you the y coordinate of the turning point. And then it just cycles back round. It gives you the 2 solutions and the coordinates of the turning point by literally typing in the quadratic equation, like 5x squared plus 2x plus 3, or whatever one. I don't even know if that's solved, so I just made that up. Hope that's answered your question, but we will be doing quadratics later, so don't panic if you haven't quite got that, and we'll have some more Q&A time, but do keep the questions coming in. Okay, so I hope that was useful. We are going to get on to doing some maths now, I promise, but using the calculator and talking about exam technique is a really, really important part of the course, part of skill. Oh, the new one needed to clear that off. Yeah, I'm sure like there are lots of different videos and things, but what I would probably promote you do is invest your own time into getting used to your calculator. Like if you've heard your calculator can do this, try and get it to do that. Like don't have that as a waste that my calculator can do it, but I just don't know how to do it. Look it up online. Whilst they're all slightly different, once you've found a few things, you'll get familiar with how the calculator's kind of formatted and the kind of interface, I suppose, or whatever the right word is. And then you'll be a lot more kind of fluent in using it. But just try stuff out. Like, you know, as long as you kind of get back to option 1, go back to the menu and get it into the bog standard mode, you can just play around with it. But yeah, there's loads online. So it's about kind of using it, getting it to do what you want it to do. So yeah, absolutely you can. I hope that's answered that question. And thank you for that. It's really important that you do maximize the opportunity to get to know your calculator and what it can do before. You don't want to be discovering it in the exam. So really they would be, whilst all of these calculators are absolutely fine for the GCSE, they would probably be the 2 I would say are the optimal ones. But all those little techniques I said about the sexagesimal stuff and the prime factorization, they actually all do that. It's only really the quadratics and the simultaneous is that it has a bit of an edge and it kind of helps you with that a bit more.